everybody, it's Kim West, and on this episode of the Gentle Parenting Show, we are having Natalie Diaz, the founder of Twiniversity, my longtime friend, and the author of What to Do When You're Having Two. And she has all kinds of great letters behind her name from all her trainings and certifications. And so I want you to first, Natalie, besides saying hi and so happy to have you and thank you for your time, but tell us a little bit about all your trainings and certifications and specialties.
Well, Kim, thanks for having me. It's so funny to do this with you because for those of you that are listening, Kim and I are like real friends, not just like, work friends. We're like legit friends. So it's great to be able to do this with somebody that not only you have the utmost respect for professionally, but that you really have a soft spot in my heart for you and your family, Kim, and Goosey too. I hope Goosey's listening to this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do have a lot of letters after my name, which is great. So what I have done, so I started Twiniversity 12 years ago. I can't even understand that. I know you're like, how do you look only 17 and your business is 12 years old? It's confusing. I'm aware of that. But what I do is my husband is a lawyer. And every 2 years he has to go for continuing legal education to be an active member of the bar. That's a very exciting chime, I know. And that's the chime of awesomeness, is what that was. Also, somebody's at my door if you have a ring doorbell. So every 2 years, I watched him go through these trainings, and I honestly felt that in my profession, as kind of like a parenting expert, birthing professional, I should be held to those same standards. So, pretty much every 2 years, I go for some new type of certification and I learn something new. So, currently, I've been trained in Lamaze birthing techniques. I am a child passenger safety technician, which I had no idea that over 74% of car seats are installed incorrectly. So I didn't actually believe that, Kim. And you know me being a super type A, I was like, that stat, not true. It's actually really true. And I've actually never helped a family install their seats that had them correct, ever. I have never once helped a family that really had it done correctly. And then most recently, I have a new passion because of my own personal experience that I went for this training. And I'm also a certified lactation counselor. So I had a very poor breastfeeding experience, and why am I complaining about it when you could do something about it? And that's exactly what I'm doing. So I'm trying to change the world of twin parenting lactation, one mama at a time.
Amazing. She really is amazing, by the way, personally and professionally. And of course, I know I'm biased too because she's got a spot in my heart.
I hope you're biased, for God's sake. Guys, one time Kim took me to this restaurant and I got food poisoning, and I will never let her live that down. I want everybody to know this in case you hear me on this podcast. It's really out of Kim's guilt that I got so sick because she made me go to that restaurant.
Just point out I did not get sick. So, oh my goodness, we're still talking about that. Okay, so there are so many things that we could talk about, which is why you're going to come back on the show so we can break down certain topics. But I thought today we could talk about, not just twinnies or triplets, but just when there's more than one, right?
Mhm.
And all the aspects and how you think, as parents we need to what makes it different, what are things that what are some tips and tools and techniques to make life more manageable and so that we can enjoy our time with our children. So I know you
Definitely.
have a wealth of thoughts and tips, so let's just go through some of them.
I'm going through it. And why I think this is an important topic. And so a lot of people say, but Nat, you're a twin expert, right? Like, why are we talking about this? Having twins, while often twin parents get irritated when you meet somebody that has like Irish twins and they're like, oh, I have Irish twins. It's the same. It's really not the same. But there's a lot that every parent could learn from a twin parent
Mhm.
because we go through kind of this master's level parenting class without being asked if we wanted to.
Right.
So often, even on our website, which is just twiniversity.com, we get a lot of Singleton readers, and that's what we call you guys with one baby at a time. We get a lot of Singleton readers because while, not all of the tips translate from Singletons to twins,
Mhm.
pretty much everything translates into the Singleton world from ours. So a lot of the things that people come researching when they come into Twiniversity, and some of our most popular articles are about the 1+1 aspect, not always the twin aspect. Of course, we get a lot of the twin pregnancy, but yeah, when you're dealing with a multiple birth family, it's fun. I want to say that with a wink and a hesitation in my voice, because a lot of twin families, I gotta be honest with you, while there's so many singletons that are like, "I always wanted twins," a lot of twin families don't feel that, and a lot of people didn't necessarily want twins, and when they found out for the first time, instead of being so excited that there was a positive pregnancy test, it comes with a lot of fear. So, often people start researching a lot sooner than singletons,
Mm.
did. Kim, like when you were expecting the girls, right, and not your twins, but when you were expecting, did you find yourself doing a lot more research when your second daughter was coming into the picture, or did you find that you were just as excited?
I definitely did, I don't think, any research when I was having my second one. So I was like, "Oh, I got this." The only thing I did do differently was my birthing choice. I did change that, and I still went to the birthing classes, but I didn't do, like I had taken baby care classes and
Yeah.
lactation class, and I didn't do that. And and unbeknownst to me, of course, I assumed that she would be easy. It would all be easier, and she'd be so adaptable because she's the second one, and it just didn't turn out like that at all. I had her early. She had horrible silent reflux and eczema, and just a completely different child who could not sleep on the go. And so I always say she put me in my place.
You thought it was gonna be easy. There's a lot of people who also take our classes that already have children, and there's a piece of me that says,
Mm,
like, "Why are they taking this?" Like, in your school of thought, like, "I already did this.
right.
Why is it gonna be different?"
Yeah.
And so when we have parents that already have children that are in the class, there's a piece of me, it's like, am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to do the right thing? But a lot of times when you find out it's twins, you are like, this may be my last pregnancy. So I want to do this right. Like if since we're having two now, maybe I wanted 1+1 down the road. They want to get things done right. So some of the differences, or some of the different ways that parents of twins prepare, it does really start during pregnancy.
Mhm,
And with twins, we have a lot more health issues.
mhm,
So we have something called TAPS and we have something called TTTS. And there's a lot of things that we see in our universe that are, a lot different. But when everything kind of levels out and where the Kims and the Nats meet is once everybody's born.
mhm,
Once everybody is out into the universe, then
mhm,
it's, while it is still a 20 experience, it's definitely you have to pay attention about having 2 kids. And Kim, this is something that we discuss too, because when we talk about sleep coaching and the
mhm,
times that you've worked with me through Twiniversity,
mhm,
I was actually really surprised, when we were talking about the issue of twins, that they are kind of treated as singletons. And it's important that parents of twins realize that just because they're twins doesn't mean they're two of the same person.
yeah,
So when
yeah.
you're working with your twin families, Kim, like when you go in, because obviously this is your podcast and people are desperate probably for sleep and that's why they're listening. But when you're working with twin families versus a 1+1, are there any like major differences? And by the way, I liked how it turned around to me interviewing you
I
because that's
missed
always
that.
been fun. But it's true because you have the expertise that people are kind of walking in to listen
Mhm.
to. So how do you treat the 1+1 different than the twins?
Well, we get some different questions, right? That so if it's, let's say I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and how do I manage bedtime?
Mhm.
Versus I have twins, how do I manage bedtime? Where with 1+1, there may be different the time of bed. may be different,
Yeah.
and so it's managing that. So I usually have, like, as an example, do story time together, read the younger story time, but together with both of the kids,
Yeah.
or all of the kids. And this is why it's so great if your children know how to put themselves to sleep independently. And then it's like, say goodnight to your big brother or sister, put the younger one in their bed, kisses, mwah, come check on you later, and then have the older story with the other
Yeah.
child, and then, right? And sort of managing it like that. So even though I did not have multiples, I did have to manage two kids. And I've also had siblings that share rooms, so we have to do sleep coaching with both of the children, and so
Yeah.
that can feel a lot like twins. I think the bigger differences I see with multiples is, as an example to your point, that they
Mhm.
may not all need the same amount of sleep, right? If they're fraternal versus identical.
Yeah.
And they may, for instance, not transition to one nap at the same
Yeah.
exact time just because they hit 15 months,
Mhm.
or one may be ready to sleep through the night without a feeding before the other one.
Mhm.
And so we have to factor that in. I mean, there are some great things, which I definitely think we should talk about, which is the scheduling aspect. And the
Mhm.
one thing I love about, and I always, when I would go and speak to multiple organizations, I always say I secretly wished that I had multiples, because I love how supportive you all are of each other. Like, we have to support each other. We have to do the best we can, and it's not going to be perfect. There's less
Yeah.
judgment, and there's more support to get on a schedule. It's, you can't really last long with a free for all, right?
Yeah.
And those aspects I feel like could be so helpful for parents of one plus one.
Yeah, I feel bad for singletons often, a lot. I don't say this in public, but, it's only, 11 people listening and most of our family right now. But I always say that when I go to, when I'm speaking all over the country and when I'll go to like a baby show and I'll do something on like mistakes new parents make, and then I'll talk about twiniversity on the side, all singletons always say, I wish there was something like this for singletons, but there's not. There real
Yeah,
unfortunately, I mean, really, and if you have something like that, please, send Kim a message and let us
yeah,
know. But we know that it does take a village to raise a child or children. And so when it comes to parents of twins, we scoop you up the minute you hear that second heartbeat. There is no, let's wait till the babies get here and you could have this experience. We want every parent to have their own independent experience, but it it is, you do need help. There is no, let me raise these twins by myself. And so like when I talk in LA or wherever, even that me and you are, it is always singleton based and talking about the things that I've learned as a twin parent that really translates fantastically in the multiple birth world. I mean, in the singleton world. And the big one is the scheduling.
yeah.
Huge. Because when a lot of our twin families go into the NICU.
Mhm.
And so over 80% of twins are born prematurely. And prematurely, by the way, could, depend, the prematurity has different levels. So it's not like a micro preemie where you're having like a 30-weeker that is, a pound. Some like my kids were born at 34 weeks. Obviously, that's, premature. They were born way early. But most twin pregnancies are actually purposely premature. They don't want you to hit that 40-week mark just because our uterus really isn't supposed to get to that size. You run into the issue of rupturing and a lot of other issues that go along with it. So, because our twins end up going into the NICU, they're often kind of coached, their first coach, not their sleep
Mhm.
coach, but their first coach is really their nurses in the
Yeah,
NICU. And they get those twinnies on a 3-hour feeding schedule because you can't feed on demand in the NICU. It's
right.
impossible. So often when our twinnies come home, they're already came home on a
Mhm.
schedule. So for us, we're like, well, it would be super dumb if
Yeah,
we just, went off the
right.
rails. So with that, we have the benefit, which sounds unusual because who says like I'm so lucky to have my kids go to the NICU, but you get that breathing room. I sometimes think of the NICU time as like a commute.
Mhm.
Because if it's working from home versus commuting. Okay, this is weird. This is really pandemic talk that I'm thinking about. Once upon a time, when you would leave work, you would have a moment to decompress before you got to your family. Now that we're working from home, we don't there is no decompression time. The NICU, while it doesn't seem like a decompression time, it's kind of giving us an opportunity to get our parenting sea legs. Our body starts to regulate back to normal. We have the assistance of nurses 24 hours a day that we could ask questions
Right.
to. They notice our fears and concerns so much more than, a nurse that is on the labor and delivery floor that's going to pop in and pop out. So there's this weird side effect of having
Mm.
twins that gives us a benefit. So that's kind of the first one when it comes to the scheduling,
Yeah.
Kim. It wasn't that like one great 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 grandmother with twins was like, this is what we do and this is the commandment of twins. It's often because of that NICU experience that we're like, dudes, let's not be dummies about this. Let's stay on that
Well,
schedule.
and also
So when
not only did they put you the twins on, let's say, the 3-hour feeding schedule, um, but they also helped you with all of your angst, right? Your worries, your
Mhm.
fears. That's huge.
It is, but you gotta be brave enough to tell
Yeah.
somebody, and that's where I really try to encourage our parents, and that's one of the benefits of classes is like, "Dude, you gotta be an advocate. You got nobody's gonna speak up for you, and please do not think that somebody's gonna speak up to you, sometimes not even your partner." Because there's parents who aren't even telling their partners how they feel, so how is your partner gonna advocate for you when they don't even know what's going on?
Right.
But the NICU is fantastic. My biggest gripe with the NICU, though, is that when you go to a regular pediatrician, there's often, postpartum mood disorder screenings.
Mhm.
There really isn't as much of that in the NICU, but if you are brave enough and courageous enough to say something, there's a social worker in every NICU that could guide you through the entire process of transitioning into being a new parent. So the amount of support is there, but surprisingly, still not enough parents take advantage of it. And by the way, this goes for singletons
Yeah.
too. If it has nothing to do with the twin thing. There's plenty of singletons that go into the NICU for a slew of reasons, and you have those same gifts that the hospital is giving you, and it's not the free diapers and formula, but yes, take out all of that with you too. But it is the wonderful support services that are there. So that's a big deal that singletons need to learn and take a page out of the twin parenting book
Yeah.
because we get that, most often, and I really want singletons to learn that you gotta be an advocate for yourself and take advantage of the hospital staff.
Yeah. And also being an advocate to yourself after you leave the hospital. And just like you said, having clear communication with your partner and really saying, I need help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also it's physical checks too. It surprises me, and I'm not saying this to alarm anybody, and guys, if you know me, I am not an alarmist, but I am somebody who says it's better to overreact 100% of the time than underreact once. One thing that I'm always shocked that people don't know about is postpartum
Mm.
preeclampsia. When you could still have issues upon discharge. And oftentimes, when you are in a general delivery setting, well, they give you paperwork that will give you kind of line by line instructions on to what to look out for. Not everybody reads those.
Right.
So, like, there's things that you have to look out for, and you have to get used to speaking up for yourself. And you should never accept that, oh, this is just what new parenting is like.
Right.
There is no such thing as this is what new parenting is like. How do you know? If you've never been a parent, how do you actually know that that's what new parenting is
Right.
like? And I so personally dismissed all my postpartum mood disorder issues
Mm.
on I'm a new parent of twins. Of course I'm going to be overwhelmed. Of course I'm going to have a lot of, bleeding after the twins are born. My body just went through a war. I dismissed so many things that were so
Yeah.
foolish. So as kind of like I'm a twin parenting
Right.
advocate and community leader first and foremost before educator and author and all that other stuff. It is really like, please pay attention. Please don't think that it's normal. And I'm honored to I really am. Like, out of all the things I do, and Kim, like I'm nonstop. The one thing I love the most is when a parent calls me. And if you guys are listening, my phone number is actually on our website, like my literal phone number. And people are like, I'm really experiencing this. What do I do? And sometimes it's really like, of course, I'm going to say, call your doctor, but sometimes people just need an ear to listen
Mhm.
to. And so to be able to have a community like Twiniversity that's like legit gonna listen to you, and we have a peer-to-peer mentorship group and stuff, I wish there was a Singleton thing like this. And maybe, Kim, that's the next thing that we
It
do
is.
together is we start a Singleton thing. I've always thought about that because there really isn't. There's March of
Right.
Dimes, there's like things like that, but it's not a direct connection where you could have a phone number of
Yeah.
somebody that really
Yeah.
cares and say, like, let me listen to you. So yeah, when it comes to having more than one, I think we're winning on, it seems like a loss, but we're actually winning on that whole community
Yeah.
experience.
Hmm. I like that idea. Let's talk about that another
Yeah,
time. Create
I'm into
that.
it, Kim. I'm ready.
So, let's talk about the whole, kind of move into how we can be a team, whether it's 1+1 or, or multiples with our partners and our friends, family, whatever.
Mhm.
Because that's part of advocating, even when you get home, so that you don't also burn out, and so that your partner and family
Yeah,
and friends can say, I'm worried about you. How can I help? And then we have to be able to actually tell them what we need. So
yeah.
yeah, so let's tell me what your little secrets are.
My secrets are that it actually starts during pregnancy. And it shocks me of how many birthing professionals do not ask the partners what are their birthing preferences. And when it comes to being a lactation consultant, I say, what are your expectations of the partner? And they're like, "What do you mean? What are my expectations?" And I'm like, "Hello, you're 50% of this family. Like, well, you're 50 of the adult family. You're 25% of this family when it comes to twins. But if you give dads and partners permission to be involved and you give them an opportunity to be heard, they crave it just as much as the
Yeah.
moms." And when it comes to our classes, while it's not required, as I air quote myself, it is strongly suggested because dads need to know, especially dads. And if you are in a same sex relationship and you have a woman next to you, as crazy as this sounds, you may actually be more likely to speak to them because communication is kind of part of our DNA. When it comes to men, it's not necessarily part of their DNA. They're going to go hunt, they're going to provide, and that's that. But if you think as an expecting mom or as a new mom that your partner has no concerns, we can't ignore that because they're in the weeds just as much as we are. So one of the very first things that I always advise all of my parents, whether your kids are 6 months old or 16 years old, when was the last time you sat down with your partner and when was the last time you said, is this all you want it to be? Is this all you wanted it to be? When you dreamed of being a parent, is this what you envisioned? And if it's not, how do we get it to be that vision? And this goes for singletons too. Kim, it is alarming of how few expectant moms sit down and have a realistic conversation about where do you see yourself fitting into this? How comfortable are you doing this? Instead of just saying, I'm going to expect you to do this, and that you're going to do this, and you're going to do this. Instead of having them be an employee
Mhm.
of your children, have them be, co-owner of the children like they kind of
Mhm.
actually are. So with the teamwork, it starts way before you think it needs to start. And if you haven't had this discussion, I strongly encourage that you pause this podcast and you go have this discussion and you come back because that is how important that this is. And Kim knows in her relationships, and I know in my relationships, the one thing that everybody wants to be is acknowledged and heard. And it's often the downfall of many relationships. Forget about finances, forget about geography that somebody wants to live there. If somebody doesn't feel respected and heard, the world's going to crumble. So, yeah, when it comes to teamwork, Kim, that's typically how I
And
deal with it.
sometimes I think too, and I include myself, of course, as women, we tend to think, oh, I'm supposed to do all of this. And I'm supposed
Mhm.
to immediately, fall in love with my baby, know exactly what my baby wants when they cry or this or that, and that now this is my responsibility. And so
Yeah.
we really have to like allow our partners to figure that out with us, and
Yeah.
not feel like you have to do it all, because really our kids are do better if we're both, co-owners, as you
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
It's
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you keep expecting yourself to do it all, your partner is gonna have that same
right.
expectation of you, and then it's gonna one day it's gonna
Yeah,
flip on you, and you're gonna say, "Why do you expect
right.
me to do everything?" Do you like my angry mom voice? That's my angry mom voice. "Why do you expect me to do everything? You gotta do half of it." It's actually
Right.
my grandmother's voice. But if you keep saying, "This is my job, and
Yeah.
this is your job," it's gonna crumble. It really is. And a lot of parents, especially too, especially with lactation, most moms feel like I have to do this. This is all on me. I'm gonna be, a vending machine 24 hours a day, and here's what I'm gonna do. Truthfully, I could give your partner 57 jobs today of what they're gonna do. And I'm working with a family right now that has twins plus two
Hmm.
older children. And her husband is working full time from home and the kids are
Hmm.
virtually schooling, and I'm like, "Okay, let's do this. Let's do it." And I know that you have like, Kim, you have such a great, like,
Uh-huh.
sleep manners chart. You could take that same sleep manners chart, and we could convert it into a parenting manners chart, and,
Yeah.
we assume that our better half, knows kind of what we want them to be, but I have not yet met an actual psychic family who could read each other's minds. The
Yeah.
clairvoyant families have not partaken in my Natalie
No.
Diaz services. So you have to, whether it's literally putting it
Yeah.
on paper, whether it's
Mhm.
texting each other, whether it's sitting down and creating kind of a family plan. You got to do it. So many people create an annual budget. Okay, this is how much we're spending on healthcare. This is how much we're spending on car payments. You need to actually sit down and you need to make a plan of these are my expectations of you. What
Mhm.
do you expect from me? How do you hope to be a parent? And you have to accept that you guys are going to have different parenting
Yeah.
styles too, by the way. Kim, you
Mhm.
probably see that so much going into people's homes. Like, what was like one of the craziest families that you saw that had very opposing, parenting styles? Have you ever been in a home where you had like a super type A mom and a dad that was so chill? You were like, dude, could somebody put a firecracker in his
Yes. Oh
butt?
my goodness. I can think of a lot of examples, like that. And so much, well, you even see it, well, I'll initially see it by one parent wants to cry it out and the other one is like going to fall apart with any kind of tears, and so we have to like
Hmm.
find a middle ground. Or one would say, I didn't want to co-sleep because they didn't have the discussion, and the other, and I've seen this too, where it's like, well, this is my last baby and I want to nurse longer and I want
Hmm.
to maybe co-sleep, and then they didn't have any of these discussions before, and so it's then I'm ending up kind of putting on my therapist hat before we can even talk about
Hmm.
sleep, right? Because we have to have everybody a united front.
Yeah. And Kim, too, I think that you and I are in the same boat when it comes to when we
Mhm.
work with families. I feel like sometimes we
Mhm.
get ambushed. So I feel like mom has something to say to dad, but she won't say it
Or,
unless I'm in the
or they,
room. And it makes me feel really uncomfortable. And I want to be like, this is not, I should not be here for
yeah.
this conversation. Please have this off time. So it's tough, but yeah, a united front, I think, is something that people don't realize that they're going to need. And even though you may not need it this second, you will need it. That's your partner. You chose to have a kid or kids with this person, so there's something there. What
And I
is it?
think
We're not
it's
too sure yet.
it's it's not that you're going to be agree on everything, want everything to be the
No,
same, but
never.
it's like that typical thing of like, disagree behind closed doors, and when you come out, you're on the same page, right? You know, or at least
Yeah.
you've agreed to be, you know, that united front. But you know, I want to just take a moment to say to talk, have you give us some examples, because I think it's important that we're concrete. You know, because if a couple is not used to having a conversation like this, they may not know, like, where do I start, Nat? And so if I'm, you know, if I'm going, you know, we've at least agreed, or I've agreed in my head, that I want to breastfeed my 20s, let's say. But, you know, if I go and talk to my partner about that, I don't really know what they could be doing to support me in breastfeeding the twins. What would be some good things that we would ask our partner?
Well, so if we think about specifically during breastfeeding, the first question that I really think that everybody needs to talk about when it comes to breastfeeding is, do you feel like I'm depriving you an opportunity to feed your children? Right? Because if we're breastfeeding to the tap, as I like to say, and by the way, I have like very unusual vernacular when it comes to breastfeeding with the vending machines and the tap. But we, at the end of the day, I think when you have a lactation consultant who uses very accessible language, it makes very
Yeah,
accessible conversations. So please don't think that I have a lack of knowledge just because I
right.
use the term vending machine when it comes to my consultations. And by the way, too, I do consultations for singletons. I only do three, like I do three consultations a month, no matter what. But singletons, if you guys really did need me, you guys could go to Twiniversity and just do like an hour consultation. I probably won't even need more than that. But just so you know, we could have this conversation. I'm not like pimping out my services. I just don't want you to think that I'm ignoring you guys because I'm really not. But the first conversation that really has to have is, do you feel that I'm depriving you of this experience? Now, I'm super Italian despite my last name. And so food is joy, right? Food is joy, food is love. If does somebody feel like they're not giving that love to their baby because they're not getting that opportunity
Mhm.
to feed them? It's crazy. Also, the feeding time is kind of
Yeah,
one of the calmest times. Often we throw dads like angry babies and be like, this is crying too much, you know, if
yeah,
breastfeeding isn't working. And, you know, things that dads could do are, if your wife is breastfeeding, the biggest thing, the biggest help that you could do is say, you know, what time are you planning on feeding the babies? And then she'll say 11:30, and say, okay, which one do you want first? Or, you know, if it's one child, obviously, you know which one it is. Change that baby, snuggle that baby. That's your first thing. When you give her the baby, that
yeah.
baby is nice and chill. Also, and dads, could we talk about this? Like, forget about breastfeeding. Could we start at the beginning? Please don't pack
Mhm,
t-shirts in your hospital bag. Plain and simple. Pack button down shirts. Skin to skin
mhm,
contact is as important for you as it is for her. And there is a wonderful wrap
mhm.
called the Aegis wrap. Kim, I don't even know if you've heard about it, but it's the only FDA approved neonatal wrap. And so I often say to dads, get one of these in your size and have it in your hospital bag. And that way you could have that skin to skin contact. And it's just, it's
And
great. And Kim, it was honestly, this wrap was developed, it was developed for ambulance transportation for neonates. It's fascinating, but you could use it like every average Joe could use it because most carriers start at 8 pounds. This starts at birth, and you could actually even use it in the NICU. So it's great. And with there's on the multiples birth discount page of Twiniversity, we have a really, really good discount because if you have to buy two, we want to try to make it work for you. So for all of our twin families, know that it's out there. But it's not expensive. It's considered a piece of durable medical equipment. And it's one of those things that I think dads need to have in their hospital bag. So it starts before delivery having these conversations because Kim, like you
mhm,
said, like how do you start? You start by having a very you ask the most loaded question in the
mhm,
history of humanity.
mhm.
Are you happy? And then we see what dad says, and then we kind of go from there, and what's going to make you happy. And you know, hopefully when you start asking questions like
Yeah,
that, they get reciprocated. And then dad will say, well, are you happy? And you'll be like,
right.
no, I'm a miserable mess. And they'll
Mhm.
say, "Well, what's going on?" And that's how you do it. You gotta just rip off that Band-Aid, and instead of having this giant elephant in the room that is pressing you against the wall until your lungs cannot fill with air, you have to ask the questions that are so challenging. And if you're I hope dads are listening. And guys, if you're like for my mamas, if you're listening to this, make sure that your partners listen to this
Mhm.
conversation as well, because they could ask that same question, that same loaded
Yeah.
question. Are you happy? You know,
Yeah.
honestly, Kim, I didn't want twins. I really didn't. I wanted one baby. When we heard that second heartbeat, there was no like, "Oh my god, this is great." This is like, "Oh my god, what
Right.
am I gonna do? I live in
Right.
650 square feet. What am I gonna like, where am I going? I don't have a lot of money in the bank. I'm not ready for this. I had 5 years of infertility. I'd never thought that I'd get pregnant, and now you're telling me I'm gonna have 2?" My brain starts running, and my husband's did too, and it took us a while to sit down and have a conversation and say, "Okay, well, this isn't what we signed up for. How are we gonna make this work? What are we gonna do?" And it goes from the emotional planning
Right.
to the space planning. We gotta clean off. You can't have those mugs that you've been saving from your alma mater for 15 years because now we need that shelf for baby bottles. Like, very simple things. You don't wanna just throw those in the garbage or put them in the attic. You have to be like, "Listen, I'm sorry. I'm losing this. You're losing this." And it's not just I'm losing my freedom or we're losing,
Right.
$87 billion. It's tough, and there's a transition that everybody's gonna go through. But when it comes to going back to dads and breastfeeding, just say, what how can I help you? How can I help you? How can I make your life easier? This is what I want everybody to say. And guys, write it down. You ready? You listening? You're so amazing. I can't believe I get to do this with you. Tell me what to do and I will do it because you are my everything. And I am so glad that we built this family together. And I just don't know how to help you. Just tell me how to help you. It gives me chills saying that because forget about Ryan
Right.
Gosling and the freaking Notebook. I think that's a dream come true. Kim, wouldn't you
Yeah.
love if somebody said that to you? If
Great.
dad came home and was like, "Kim, I love you so much. How can I help you?" I would love that.
And then it's
So yeah,
even
I think
having
it's
the conversation multiple times, right? Especially, so you have one idea when you're pregnant, and then it's a whole nother thing, right? When they're home, and then it can even change. Like so many families have said to me, well, we either A, didn't plan on sharing our bed, now here we are,
Mhm,
or B, we did plan on it and it's completely not working for us, or breastfeeding didn't work out, we didn't get the help, and there's disappointment around that, and so it's constant
mhm.
revisiting. Not to mention when they become toddlers, how do you handle temper tantrums? I definitely had couples where one partner said, my parents were yellers and I don't want to be a yeller.
Mm,
But I don't know how to do this. And the other parent was like, no, my parents didn't do that. But then they didn't handle anything at all. Right. And so there's so many times in your entire, really your whole
yep.
relationship of raising children where you want that connection and you need to have the revisiting of the tough topics.
It's tough. I think now that my twins are 16, most of our conversation starts out with, "I'm gonna kill one of them." That's how they start at this age. I feel like whenever my husband have an open dialogue, and when we talk about, what our day was like, that's usually how it starts, but it always ends with, "Ugh,
Right.
they're really not so bad." So, it's great to have him now, and I think about that I could have alienated him
Hmm.
27,000 times, and by the way, he could have me too, and it's nice to have somebody who I don't have to explain history to, right? He is my living history. And I have to say the truth, I had a really good example of good parents. And, to the day my father passed away, they had a really amazing love story, like really amazing. And I'm honored to have been a part of that. But my husband came from a
Mhm.
family that was the polar opposite. So it's always been because I was like, of course he's going to love me forever. And then I think that there was a fear of his that, is she going to love the babies more than me? Like now that
Yeah.
somebody's new coming into the picture. And it's funny that, it takes years to have those conversations, but it didn't need to take years. If somebody just had the
Yeah.
colognes to say it, but we didn't, because you get so in the weeds of being a new parent that
Yeah.
you forget to check in with each other. And you got to do it. You really have to do it, and you have to figure out, just like they're like, "Oh my god, what's my love language? My love language is receiving presents." What's his love language? What's your love language? And it could just be
Right.
verbal, like, "Tell me I'm doing good." That's all that I need. So, yeah, it's a huge thing when it comes to twins, because you have to have your partner support. There is no, I'm going to do this solo. Even my single moms, and please, if you are a single parent, do not think that you are excluded from this conversation, because you have a partner too. Whether it's paid help,
Mhm.
whether it's community support from the church, whether it's your little old lady
Mhm.
neighbor that comes over every day at 4 o'clock, there's always somebody that you are going to turn to. And if you do not have somebody, we will get you somebody. Well, obviously, it's not going to be somebody in your house, but that peer support of Twiniversity is critical. And the other thing that we have is once a month, we have a monthly meetup of all twin families. And these are people from around the globe. It's not even, if you could get there for the time zone, it's run by a clinical social worker who's also a lactation
Mhm.
consultant, who's also a doula, who is also one of my best friends. And of course, she's a twin mom, but she's a
Mhm.
twin mom plus two. So she is our needle in the haystack, and she's the leader of our monthly meeting every single month. And when she after every meeting, she'll text me and she'll be like, "Okay, we had this many people this week, and there's this mom, her name is, Jane, and she really needs a little extra support." And so I personally call Jane. And I'll say, "Jane, hey, it's Nat. I heard from Lauren that, you're not having the best time. How could we help you?" And that's, you don't pay for that. That's not like, a line item of a bill that you're going to get. This is just the community that we have. And I wish to God, I really do, like genuine God, whoever your God is, I wish that we all adopted this philosophy, that this world wasn't built for us, like us, me. This world was built for us. And how do we make it better for each other? Because if you just spend 15 minutes a day thinking about something outside of your home, just 15 minutes a day, if everybody actually did that, oh my God, it would be mind-blowingly awesome. And I think that's where you and I are so alike, because we spend so much time. How are we going to make the lives of these people better? How are you going to get their kids to sleep through the night better? How am I going to get them to feel whole and accept whatever reality is that they're going through? Right? This is we Kim and I have both dedicated our lives to the betterment of parents. And I think that's probably the foundation of why we get along so well, and it's why we love each other so much. It's because we know that although, yes, we are small business women, and yes, we are entrepreneurs, and we're, fancy whatever we are, at the end of the day, we are people who want to make our communities better. And so honestly, Kim, I know like we could talk about this stuff for 85 hours, but we're so lucky. We're lucky to have each other, you and I. I mean, there's not a lot of people in this industry that have
Mhm.
the same kind of giant heart that you do. So
Me too.
I'm lucky
And
we got each other.
it's
So
funny
thank you.
how this conversation didn't go where we initially started it, and I love where it went, and that what our kind of ending message is: to speak up, to ask for help, to talk with your partner, and that there are people there who will listen and support you. And if it's not in my community, then it's in your community. I spoke with Amber Trueblood on another episode, and she had her birthing doula, the same one for each of her four children.
Mhm.
And that woman had raised 11 children, nine that were adopted and two that were biological. And Amber said to her, okay, how the heck did you do that? And still be the amazing person that you are. And one of the many tips that she shared is so in alignment to what you have said today, is that every person, you need to have 20 minutes, if you're a woman, where you are talking a day to another woman. That it really, we all need that connection. And hopefully you're talking to somebody who you trust and is authentic and loving and caring. And sounds like you're saying the same thing.
I am, and it's generational. You know, by your
Mhm.
daughters watching you do that your whole
Yeah,
life, they're better women for it. And so it's like a whole
yeah,
perpetual awesomeness that's going on here. So, yeah, I love that. I don't know if I could raise 11 children.
yeah.
I could barely handle the 2 plus the dog, plus I still feel like I'm raising my husband. So, it's a lot. It's a lot,
Thank
girl.
you,
It's a lot.
Nat. Definitely going to have you back on. We can talk, about so many things. So thank you for your time today. And if you want to
My pleasure,
learn
Kim.
more
Thanks for
about
having me.
Nat and Twiniversity and follow her on social and look at all the great resources that she talked about today, we will have links to all of that on sleeplady.com/podcast. And so we hope that you go check out Twiniversity and maybe join some of those groups, right? Thank you for offering that to all the families of singletons too.
My pleasure, Kim.
All right. Thanks, Nat.